rojo de la jornada, un banco, CaixaBank, perdiendo un 2,15%, Banco Santander con caídas del 1,3% y Athey, ya en este caso cae menos, lo hace un 0,6% al cierre. Resto de índices europeos, pues tenemos prácticamente a todos en positivo. La Bolsa de Londres se ha dado la vuelta, parece que va a despedir la sesión en verde, aunque prácticamente en tablas, con un avance del 0,08% en los 8.409 puntos. Resto de índices europeos con subidas más o menos estables. En el caso del CAC 40 de París son del 0,28 y 7.503 puntos. El DAX alemán avanzando al cierre cerca de medio punto porcentual, 22.076 puntos, y Milán liderando ganancias. Va a terminar la sesión con avances cercanos al punto porcentual del 0,92 y 36.794 puntos. Las noticias dentro del ámbito bursátil europeo, pues en el caso de España nos llevan, como les decíamos, a Bankinter, que ha presentado resultados, unos resultados del primer trimestre con un beneficio de 270 millones de euros, es un 35% más, que han hecho a la compañía, como decimos, impulsarse al cierre cerca de un 1,5%. Fuera de España, también presentación de resultados de otros bancos, como es el caso del francés BNP Paribas. Le ha ido bastante peor, ha reducido su beneficio en el primer trimestre un 4,9% hasta los 2.951 millones, y eso está lastrando a la compañía en el mercado con cierta intensidad. A punto de despedir la sesión, los títulos de BNP pierden un 1,45% en los $72,75. Y procedemos a seguir analizando la actualidad macroeconómica. Nos acompaña en los próximos minutos James Athey, gestor de fondos de renta fija en Marlborough. James, welcome. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
James, will the uncertainty in the equity market last as long as Trump's trade negotiation with the rest of the world?
I only wish I knew the answer to that. Of course, knowing what comes next in terms of headlines is one thing. Knowing what the steady state for trade policy is likely to be over the medium term, how investors react to that information in the short and medium term, these are all highly uncertain. So knowledge, unfortunately, is a luxury that we can't afford. What I would say is that there are significant and numerous growing downside risks to the earnings outlook for companies both within and without the US. And I think after this recent rally, we've probably not discounted those risks sufficiently.
To what extent is Trump managing to calm the markets with his recent statements?
I mean, obviously you can see that he has pleased the markets a little bit. We're well off the lows in equities. The fact that he's applied this 90-day pause to a significant proportion of tariffs, and we've seen several headlines from both the president and from some of his advisors, raising the idea that they want to do deals. They don't actually want huge tariffs to remain, and the market has reacted to that. But I suspect that the uncertainty that has been injected will linger longer, and that even if tariffs are reduced significantly from here, there will still be economic damage from this volatile episode that we've been through.
Another question, another important question, bond markets. Can the US president breathe easy given the behavior of the bond market?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the bond market has had a quite unusual reaction, shall we say, to the news flow, to the downgrading of growth expectations. The Treasury Secretary, I think, has a big part to play here. He's made it quite clear that he wants a smaller budget deficit and he wants lower bond yields. So far, we haven't really seen any policy to back that up. But if he can retain credibility with markets and if he continue to espouse those messages, I think bond markets can be comforted. Inflation will also play a big part. Ultimately, though, if bond markets were to behave very badly, I would expect central banks to step in, even if only temporarily, to support markets and prevent some of the really negative outcomes.
What are the expectations regarding the dollar? What do you think of those? What do you think of those who say that, in light of this development, the euro can become an alternative currency?
I mean, the euro is already an alternative reserve currency. It's a significant proportion of reserve balances on average, and the de-dollarization trend, the percentage of global reserves which are held in US dollar assets, has been declining for decades. So there's nothing new there. I think it's important to recognize, however, that there is no single currency, no one currency that can truly replace the dollar in terms of size, liquidity, and offering liquid assets and safe assets for investors to buy into. So what we're expecting is actually just a normalization. The US dollar had become incredibly expensive, US assets had become incredibly expensive, and global investors have become incredibly concentrated in those US denominated assets. And we just expect that to normalize over a significant period of time. And history says that from this starting point, it's reasonable to expect a secular bear market in the US dollar, and that could mean a move of 20 or 30%. But what we would say is that probably doesn't come without some disruption, because the Eurozone will probably struggle to cope with euro strength of that magnitude. And so potentially the ECB might need to be more dovish to support the Eurozone economy.
James Athey, gestor de fondos de renta fija en Marlborough, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Pues pendientes de la actualidad del mercado, vamos ahora sí a contarles cómo finalmente han despedido la sesión los índices de renta variable europeos. Ahora ya sí se ha producido el cierre definitivo de las bolsas del viejo continente, con un IBEX 35 que finalmente ha despedido la sesión con un